All right, so this evening there we have Ian with us, and he is going to be talking to us about the OAS. And he says it's a very boring topic, but I don't know. I think we could be able to maybe liven it up a bit. Ian, what do you think yourself?
Well, there's hope for you if you can. It's a dry topic. Some would say it's a bit like FT8, but I not go that far.
Ian, you're very welcome to the Tuesday night lecture series, and it's great to have you along. Over to you just whenever you're ready to go.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave. Thanks everybody for arranging it. Actually, inviting me along tonight. As we started off by saying, it is a kind of a dry subject, so if you want to waste about 25 or 30 minutes of your life, you're in the right place. But I'll try and make it as interesting as possible. Actually, I have to congratulate you as a club because your lectures or your Tuesday night seminars have been fantastic. I haven't got to every one of them, but any that I have got to, it has been excellent. Very, very well supported. George, I missed yours about the coaxial connectors, so I'll have to catch those up on YouTube. But fair play to you as a club. You have pulled it all together, and it's been really, really good. Um, I'll start here by clicking a few buttons just to start the screen here. So if you just give me a wee second until I get this organized, and then hopefully we'll be able to see it all happening. So I'll ask you first of all, can you see it? Can you see the presentation? Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
nod
yeah,
of a
yeah,
head there. Yeah,
yeah.
okay, big thumbs up, right? I'm not used to this technology. This isn't really my presentation. It's been devised by an RSGB coordinator, a guy called Ian Gi0AZB, GM4AUP. And I'll introduce you what Ian does in a few minutes, but he has actually put this presentation together. And the OAS, the Operating Advisory Service volunteers can use it whenever they're going out to give talks to clubs, etc. So who am I? I don't know everyone in the list here. I know a few. Dave, I know quite well. I see Jack, GI4LVC from Macrofelt, and George I know as well. A few of the faces actually I do recognise, but I hail from the northwest of the province, up in amongst the Spurren Mountains. So my call sign is GI0AZB. Esther's on the group here as well. She's GI0AZA. And together we've been kicking about quite a few years. I think we first came into amateur radio in the Mid Ulster Club, but not the Mid Ulster Club as I know it today. It was actually based in Moneymore in those days, and run by a very enthusiastic bunch of amateurs around the Mid Ulster, Macrofelt, Cookstown area. And Jack, actually, who's in the screens tonight, was a lecturer in the college that we all attended and did our radio amateur exams and many years ago. So that's a wee bit about me. What do I do? I still work for a living, unfortunately, in the civil service. I work in the Department of Agriculture and the Policy Division, but very, very interested in amateur radio. You'll probably find us up a mountain somewhere. You'll probably find us shouting CQ Soda, or maybe at a Raynet event, because we're involved quite a bit in the Raynet as well. I also have a D-Star repeater at the house here, and I dabble a bit with the help of my son, I have to admit, on networking and repeaters, etc. as well. But how did I get into the OAS? It sounds a bit dicey when you say OAS, but it's short for Operating Advisory Service. It was advertised 2 years ago. It was actually 2018 it was advertised as a new initiative for the RSGB. And it was set up originally to provide a bit of advice to those members that experience in operating issues. And it replaced another organization from the RSGB called the AROS. And that stands for the Amateur Radio Observation Service. Maybe you have somebody in the audience who was an AROS member. Anybody here? No? They were quite a few, and I didn't know them all, but some of them, the AROS, were members up in the northwest here, and they would have been involved of observing what was going on the bands, and we'll come to that in a wee bit. We'll just give you a brief history of that. So that's what OAS is, a new initiative, and it replaces AROS. I suppose we'll give you a history of why it's done that. So what is AROS? Well, the observation service, it was created really to maintain good practice within the service, within the amateur service. And also on top of the good practice, it was also set up to investigate and try and discourage that type of practice that would bring the amateur radio service into disrepute. They probably were quite busy, and I would say they would have been busy because over the years there has been, as would be in many organizations, difficulties from time to time. And those difficulties have to be dealt with and have to be try and smooth them out and try and get any service operating as it should be. Now, the AROS people weren't well known. They were actually operating very much behind the scenes. Now, probably people would have known some of them, but they wouldn't have been advertising the same as what I'm doing tonight. What a service is now the Operating Advisory Service. So the reason for probably working behind the scene was to try to investigate in the background and do their normal duties. They were quite busy. Some of them were successful, some of them maybe not so much. And we'll come to why the not so much success was a problem. So we'll move on. I think I paused actually the screen here, see if we can get on to the next slide. Ofcom were very much in contact with the AROS, and Ofcom, as you know, are the body that's responsible for the spectrum and for the frequency of amateur radio service. So when they got involved with AORS with any difficulties, they found in practice, if they wanted to get a prosecution of someone that was misbehaving, it was really difficult to find that prosecution. Why was that? Well, Ofcom, each year you can go on to the Ofcom site and you can see their board results, their finances, and you can find out how many investigations that they have done. And for amateur radio, not that many. You may think it would be quite high, but it doesn't actually stretch into double figures. From 2004, if they were in the high nines, that was about the height of it. so there wasn't a lot of investigations. And the reason why the investigations were so low was probably two main reasons. It took a lot of time, it took a lot of resources to carry out investigations, and you had to gather a lot of evidence, which the AROS people tried to do, but then you also had to have the circumstances surrounding the conditions, and you had to have everything very well laid out. And that difficulty was this part here. It's very, very challenging to get the right information. It all boiled down to one thing, and this is human nature, folks, and everybody is guilty of this, and probably we all do it the whole time. If you get into an argument or a debate, you tend to see red, the veils come down over your eyes, and you try to tick the bit between your teeth, and you try to argue your point. And if you do that on air, then that actually adds fuel to the fire. So Ofcom's feedback was very, very hard to get prosecutions. And they left it at that. They also give a bit of feedback on how much it actually costs. And this is the interesting part. For a prosecution to be successful, they would have to employ a couple of field officers. A lot of investigations probably adds up to an average of about £50,000 per investigation. And when you go to court, probably the magistrate that hears the case and finds the parties guilty, they would have a sentence of about £200 of a fine. So you can see your budgets being 50 grand for a fine of 200. Okay, the moral of the story is, yes, you've proven somebody to be incorrect, but it's very, very expensive. So if you were to go down that route, Ofcom actually give a lot of guidance on it. And if I show you what their current guidance is on their website, you can have a look at it. This is on the Ofcom, the misuse and the license, and it's published last August, 23rd of August was the last feedback. And it actually tells you how they deal with it, what their powers are, how they interact with those powers, how they interact with the RSGB, and how you can report any misuse directly to Ofcom. Interestingly, they also give the roles of repeater keepers, what a repeater keeper should do if there is some misuse happening on the repeater. And also, if you come across misuse yourself, what would be your log, or how would you go about getting that information? So a lot of information on it on the website if you want to read it. The process of how a license is revoked is explained in great detail. And if you want to get any more information from Ofcom, they have contact details for the people that deal with it. So we'll pause there. Any questions so far on the misuse and the Ofcom's role in the guidance?
Folks, if you want to ask a question, you should be able to unmute yourselves now if you have anything you want to ask Ian there.
Apologies for joining late, by the way, just in.
In that, John,
you're okay.
That's one black mark against you. I just want to add to what Ian said. Some of you will know I've been volunteering for the Society a long time, and I recall a case in the northeast of England several years ago, and northeast being Geordie land and whatnot, and Newcastle and that area, I'm sure you are all aware of how how them people are and whatnot, and steel workers and whatnot, and the docks over the years. So there was a case brought to court, so successfully got to court and whatnot, and it was about somebody giving wild abuse over repeaters and to people and whatnot, and swearing and whatnot. The judge turned around and threw it out of court by saying, well, the defence argued the case, and the judge concluded that F and B and C was everyday language in this part of the world, so there's no case to answer. And it was, I'm not saying it was only that case, but it was after that case things started changing with Ofcom, and the debate happened within the society about the RS and what way, and what all we can do is give advice, because we're going to get nowhere with prosecutions. Like, you know, it's not that Ofcom don't care, Ofcom do care. I'm aware of a couple of cases ongoing at the minute, one locally, and a real big case that I hope will be reported on London, that I can say no more about, but it's a very serious case. So they will prosecute where they think, and they will take a case to court where they think they are going to be very, very successful, but it is a struggle, as Ian says. But,
yeah,
and as Ian also said there, you know, it's up to ourselves, the police ourselves, and there is a big onus on repeater keepers to, that is their NOV after all, that's been abused. So,
yeah,
I would encourage I would encourage any repeater keeper to familiarise themselves with that advice.
Yeah, yeah. Like anything legislative, it's a really difficult subject to get to grips with. But moving on, the RSGB in 2018 decided, let's do something different. And that something different was the creation of the OAS, the Operating Advisory Service. Now, I watched in 2018, they advertised actually in the usual news bulletins, GB2RS News. They also advertised in the Radcom magazine. And I was watching it carefully. What does this service do? You know, the operating actually attracted my thinking, because I thought the clubs like yourselves do an excellent job. I belong to the Bush Valley Club, and we do a lot of training with anyone coming into the hobby and try and keep them on board. So the clubs really, their operating training and their operating delivery is fantastic and second to none. So I had an eye on this operating. If it would be something that we could get involved with from the club side, I would be interested in that. Because I'm working full time, I don't have any interest in the investigative side or collecting evidence or anything like that. And at that time, I didn't understand how the roles worked. So I watched the advertisement, watched the roles coming up. And the first thing was the coordinator role is one person, and that is the name of Ian Stewart, the call sign that we introduced there at the beginning. He coordinates all the advisors in the whole of the UK, and his coordination, he trains, he shares information. Last year I was over at the it was one of the fairs, one of the events, and he had us all together as by way of introduction. It was really, really good because he gave us a lot of information in the background to it. So I looked at Region 8 and there was nobody else at that time interested. So I put my hand up and said, yep, I'll have a go at it. So around the whole of us, there's supposed to be one for each region. Now that's not the be all and end all. There can be additional helpers, there can be additional operators, and for the like of Northern Ireland, that's geographically quite diverse. A lot of clubs in different areas. It would be ideal if the regional team had maybe some more help from other operators that want to get involved in OAS, and perhaps it could be shimmied up that different parts of the OAS service could be given to different people. At least that's my thinking, maybe in the way forward. So at the minute, what does an advisor do? Well, they advise. Advisors advise. And here's the list of advisors at the minute, and you'll probably recognize some of these advisors. Scotland, they need another one for the North and the Northern Isles. England, the Northwest is covered. The Northeast isn't at the minute. West Midlands covered. North and South Wales, not. 2 vacancies there. Myself at the minute for Northern Ireland. London and Thames, a G7. You'll recognise that name, Paul Lewis, left Northern Ireland and moved over to England on a barge. He covers South and Southeast. And then we've got 2 operators that do Southwest and the Channel Islands. Haven't met Mark or Dave yet, but I hope to meet them at some stage. And then Dave Cutts covers East Anglia and the East of England. So a few vacancies there at the minute. And also there could be additional ones maybe for the regions too. So these are the advisors. And then Ian is the coordinator, and he will coordinate us and get together with us. He's really, really good. The emails, keeps in touch quite often on the emails the whole time. And he keeps us up to date of what's happening. So what would we do? It actually suits me very, very well because the team would get general advice together and would put documents together. For example, on the website again, we have a document here which has just been published. It's published last November. And its title is a advisory note abusive transmissions. Philip touched on some of the things there. Most of them are covered in this note. There's things like very severe threats, harassment, what you can do, deliberate blocking of frequencies, which is an interesting one. That comes up now and again. What not to do, and then the support that's available as well. So that information, as a club, you could actually download it. You could include it in your pack for your new members, or if you're having an open night or you're having an information night and you wanted to give it out to the membership, old and new, then you could certainly use any of the documents that are available. Feel free to do that. Surprise, surprise, the other thing the advisors do is talk to the clubs. This is the second talk that I've given so far. I think West Tyrone invited me just before Christmas. We had a good night there. No, sorry, this is a third maybe. I think I've done our own club. Yeah, informally I've done our own club. And then you're the third one here. So we talk to the clubs as well. Try and promote good practice. Lead by example. Don't do what I do, do what I say. Is that what they say? Or something like that. But try and promote good practice. Everybody does that. I think every member of a club or an official on the club would try to do that, good practice, and otherwise, because it's a selling point for your club. I also would offer one-to-one advice, and that's to members, RSGB members. It's because it's a service for the RSGB, then it's affiliated to the membership. But in saying that, because clubs are affiliated to RSGB, if you have a difficulty and you want advice and guidance, hi, nobody's going to stand in your way. Everybody wants to help everybody nowadays. So that's the job description. If you were going for an OAS volunteer, that would be some of the things that you'd be wanting to do. Maybe it doesn't suit everybody. Standing up and talking in front of a crowd doesn't suit everyone, but there's lots of other things that you could do as a volunteer. What do they not do? This is probably the list of things that are not in the job description. For example, going to Nuts Corner and getting in balaclavers for sending people in the heavies, definitely not. It's an advisory service. We advise, but we don't do any of the what the people would say is sort this problem out for me. They don't collect evidence, recorded evidence, but could point you in the direction of what evidence would you need if you wanted to pursue anything. So we do not collect it. Unfortunately, we don't get paid as a solicitor or a barrister. That wage just doesn't come to the volunteer. So we don't offer legal advice. But again, there can be sources of where you can, citizens advice, etc., that you could get legal advice from. And we definitely don't take on and solve the problems. That is purely a volunteer, too much for a volunteer to do. But advice and guidance of where you could seek help with it, certainly that's within the remit of the volunteer. So that's what we don't do. You've heard what we do. Is there anyone else out there that can help, or have you any other questions? Well, we'll pause there because we're on slide 11 and we only have 4 more slides to go. So any questions so far of what the service does or what it doesn't do?
One question on the volunteer service, the volunteers to the service. It was a very general description of what they offer. So, I mean, if I give you an example of an experience that you know somebody has, would you be able to give an answer on what you would tell that person? I'm not talking about something that's actually ongoing live or at the minute or anything. I'm just talking about the question that came across.
Yeah, okay. John, is it? No?
That's right, yes.
Yeah, okay, John, yeah. What we do depends on the individual event itself, John. So some of the events actually are just like a general chat to a person. You know, a member could come and say, look, I've heard this going on in the air, and it could be something simple like operating on a repeater. How do you actually work a digital repeater? How do you operate it, and what should you be doing space-wise in between overs, etc.? So that's just a general advice, and that's just more or less having a chat to the person one-to-one, a bit like your mentor or your supervisor talking to you if you were in the work situation, John. If it's more complex, then it can develop into the service providing you with a plan. Now, a plan actually would be a documented situation of what you would need to do if you come across this again. And that would be written down and shared with you. That comes from the coordinator, from Ian. So, you know, we would talk to you, gather the information, then have a meeting with Ian, get the plan together, and then share that confidentially with you and see if that helps you. Get a bit of feedback from you. If it's of help, well and good, we've done a good service. If it doesn't help you, then can we signpost you in another direction or signpost you in another area? So sort of like depends on the level, John, of what the difficulty would be from an informal situation to a very formal difficulty maybe that someone's having. Does that help at all?
A wee bit, but well, you give an example. I got involved with the AROS before I actually had my ham license, and in the early days of later days of shortlisting, before I got my ham license, I was decoding DMR, and there was quite severe abuse on one of the repeaters. and I was able to record the abuse and record the details of what call signs, where it came from, and all time slots and all details. And AROS services, they asked me to send that over, so I sent that over. Now the abuse has been going on for about a week or so, and the abuse stopped after that. And so obviously they got it sorted out from there, and it was in England, but it was coming through obviously through the DMR repeater system. So is there nothing like that now? That, for instance, if somebody comes to me and says, "I heard this," or if they go to you and say, "I heard this," what can I do about it? Because I understand what you're saying about the cost behind things, but it to me, and I don't mean this in a bad way, I'm not trying to put anybody down, but it sounds a bit, the way what you're describing to me is a bit of a tooth tiger when it comes to actually dealing with problems that operators and listeners have on the ground.
Yeah, yeah. To go back to what the service is, it is an advisory service, John, and I emphasize the advice part of it. To sort out a difficulty, if there is abuse on a repeater, then it has to go at a higher level to either the repeater keeper who can act on the repeater, or if that is not going to work, then it has to go to a higher level again to the service or Ofcom, who would investigate it from there. But it's going back to what we said at the very beginning of the presentation. Evidence, like you have described there, call signs, etc., and recordings have to be provided on a long-term basis. The legislation that controls the Wireless Telegraphy Act actually defines harassment in particular periods of time, and that's where the evidence gathering is very, very, very important. So as a volunteer, John, yep, we can give advice. And what you actually described there, you could become an advisor yourself with good experience of actually having done that. And that would be ideal to pass on to other advisors who could help people too. So RSGB mostly will be looking for volunteers that can advise. For the actual sorting out of difficulties and problems, it will depend on the problem, and then the evidence gathering hands over. And that's where Philip mentioned earlier on 2 ongoing cases at the minute. And those things take time, months, times of periods to actually work their way through. This is where we're interested probably, and if I move on, this is where we're interested in...
Ian, sorry, just a quick one before you go on there. You did mention there a wee bit about the volunteers. I take it there isn't a spectrum requirement on the license level. They'll take everyone from a foundation, intermediate, and advanced to be volunteers.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just in case anyone thought that you had to be a certain level, it's literally, if you want to volunteer, come on ahead, type of thing.
Absolutely. There's no job description or qualification requirement for it. Whenever it was first advertised, it was a very open page because anyone that's interested in helping out, a bit like what John was describing there, maybe has experience of something or has come across it in a past job or a past life. So whenever I rang up, I was expecting, Dave, what you were saying there, perhaps you need to have a particular level of requirement, but no, not really. An interest in it and an ability to want to help people is probably the 2 most important things from there.
Can I just elaborate on that, if you don't mind? Yeah.
Yeah.
I get tired listening to, do you have to be a certain license level? A license is a license. Somebody can have a foundation license and just maybe pass their test last night and be far, far, far more qualified than any of us on this call. Just because they're only a foundation license does not mean to say they're not qualified to do something, because they could be very technical, come from a very technical background. I'll just elaborate a wee bit more on what Ian was saying. If anybody is interested, talk to Ian or talk to myself. The only people who are allowed to gather evidence, as far as the law is concerned, are Ofcom. because they have the warrant cards, they have the rights, they have the calibrated equipment. All we can do is what Ofcom would say is gather supporting information. So if you go to Ofcom and you say, oh, I have evidence, blah, 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 John, they'll turn around and say, no, you have supporting information. And in saying that, the webpage, as Ian was showing you earlier, there is a page there where you can report abuse directly to Ofcom. So if you're being abused or you're aware of somebody else being abused on air, you can fill in a wee simple web form and send it off to Ofcom, and somebody from Baldock will probably, from the monitoring service, will probably contact you. Some people get that mixed up with if you have interference. What Ofcom will say, and on the recorded message says they will charge you £91 odd pence plus VAT per hour, blah, blah, blah. But if the problem's not found in your equipment, there'll be no charge. Some people get that mixed up. There's no charge for reporting abuse. But as Ian also said there, and I said it earlier, the first point of call, if it's through a repeater, is the repeater keeper. So just to clear them a couple of points up, and never ever think that one license is less than another. Because I know there's plenty of boys with foundation licenses with a lot more experience than me and a lot of stuff. Okay, sorry about that, Ian. Just need to elaborate there a wee bit.
Absolutely no problem at all. Just to emphasize, in radio amateur or in any club, as in a work situation, and it happens throughout life, harassment should never be tolerated. So can the police help? Ian has two useful slides in here. Threats of violence or threats of harassment certainly should always be considered and reported to the correct authority, because you never know what these things lead to. And I know in any work situation, we have policies and protocols in place for people feeling safe in the work environment, etc. So actually, some of the cases, if you see them reported on the court service by Ofcom, etc., it is because there's a serious threat has been made or a serious harassment case has been made as well. So Ian has included that, and very, very usefully, he has put in here the difference between English and Scottish law. Because we're in different jurisdictions, there is a different jurisdiction for the law wherever you live at or wherever it has been committed. Now that can cross jurisdictions, of course, in radio amateur world, because where you transmit from can be in a different jurisdiction from where you actually receive the message from. So that has to be taken into account as well. However, in Northern Ireland, we have laws that actually do cover the harassment, and there is a legal Harassment Act, and it defines what they call as the types of harassment and when you should report it and who you should report it to. If you feel that you don't want to go directly, you can use intermediaries who will do it on your behalf as well. So, moving on to the actual, what if you need help? What can you do? Well, your first point of call would be either Dave or Philip as RSGB representatives, and that's in any radio matter, anything at all, because they would have the knowledge or the background of people that could maybe have a helping hand to you. Philip mentioned there earlier, you know, it could be interference, electrical interference, it could be an interference from outside, etc. So your representative, the RSGB, you're lucky in the Mid-Ulster area that you have such an active background and people that will look after you there. So your representative for AOS, Ian would like all the inquiries to go through his email address, coordinator at the OAS RSGB.org, and that's on the website. So you can actually fill a form or an inquiry form in, and it'll go direct to Ian from there. Or you can come through myself as the Region 8 advisor. What happens after that then? Well, the repeaters have been mentioned, and it's very, very important to know who your NOV repeater holder is. And that is advertised. It's on the list here. So if you have a repeater and you're having a difficulty on that repeater, not only for misuse of the repeater, but because it's not working, etc. We have a couple that are not operational at the minute here. There's actually one. There's a new one that's licensed there at the minute, and then the rest are all operational. On the website of the Northern Ireland repeaters, this is ukrepeater.net, and you'll find the repeater call sign and the name here. So for an example, all these red ones are the digital repeaters, and if you click on the repeater, you'll get a lot of information of who the repeater keeper is, where they're at, when it was licensed, and when it's up for renewal. So all the information is on there. If you wanted to contact the repeater keeper, you usually can report the status or get the status of it, and they will put the contact through to the repeater keeper. So if you haven't, you probably already know that site and you use it quite regularly, but it gives you all the information of the different repeaters. So the NOV for the repeaters are issued by Ofcom. If there is some difficulty with it, then a group of you could get together and help the repeater keeper, because it's a lonely job being a repeater keeper. There's not a lot of, sometimes finance goes all the one way for repeaters, keeping them going. But if you act together as a club or a support group, it's a great help, a fantastic help for the repeater keeper to know that there's somebody supporting them there on the upkeep and the management of the repeater. It's also good whenever something does happen that the repeater keeper is not on their own trying to sort this out, that they actually get a bit of support as well. So what kind of a plan, or what way does the plan look that I mentioned earlier on? The plan would be very, very simple. It would sort of log out what you would need to do, or where your starting point would be at, how you work yourself through it, and the most important thing, I suppose, is not to try to sort it out yourself. That is very, very important. If you have the evidence, if you have the details, etc., do not react to anyone that's given abuse. That it's different from social media, where social media would very much be like keyboard warriors, as they call them. I don't know whether that's the right terminology, but people would put on social media their thoughts and leave it at that, and then just watch to see the people reply. On the air, any abuse that has been so far, it is always to try to get an audience or to try to get a reaction. And that is very difficult. As I said, sometimes as the red mist comes down in front of your eyes and you react unintentionally, but very intentionally, try and don't do that. Try to switch off, move away, get support, and get a plan together of how this can be actioned. I know in the Northwest here, one of the repeaters has been switched off on several occasions, and switched off for what they would call a cooling down period, and then switched back on again. That has been successful with some of the abuse that has happened in that. But this is a thing that has happened since year dot, whenever repeaters have been started. It's not going to go away, and you have to try and work with it as best we can and work our way through it and try and support the people that are doing the good work with it. So specifically, I suppose don't react. Try to work together to minimize the effect. Try to make the enjoyment increase, and to try and increase the enjoyment for people. And that can be something simple like supporting, words of encouragement to those people that are being affected, including repeater keepers or clubs, and try to get the people to understand that the support for you here, this will work through and eventually will go away. Takes time, just doesn't happen overnight, but once you get through it, the world will be a better place. So as Ian says again, don't respond on air. Hard to do, but I think if you can crack that one, then you get a lot of things which dry up very, very, very quickly. So they do. I think at this stage, it's the clubs maybe are the most use, and the club and the support that you have in the clubs and the training that you guys give the new members. Also, part of the training could be this: reaction is not a way of defense. Defense is actually being sensible, being mature, and moving on. And that sometimes can be built into training programs to see the logic in it. Anyway, that's a very dry material, everything that's over. The recruitment drive is now, so this is the chance. I know there's people out there's people in clubs that have lots of experience on how to operate correctly, and lots of experience in the fact that they've been doing this for a wee while, maybe a year or maybe more than a year, or in some cases maybe a decade. But it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. If you have a genuine interest on moving the service forward and being involved, maybe getting some materials together and sharing that material, same as the OAS service is doing online, maybe through your own club website. There's ideas that clubs have that are very simple, but very, very effective at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, that's what we want, is to make it a nice experience for everyone coming into the hobby and for everyone to enjoy the hobby, which we do immensely, and we get a lot of fun out of it, hopefully, at the end of the day. That's my presentation over, Dave. So I'm going to stop the screen sharing and go back to the camera again. So over to you, Dave. Thank you very much. I'll take any questions and try and answer them. If I can't get you an answer, I'll come back to you with whatever advice I can find.
No, thank you, Ian. Very much so. And no, I wouldn't be so hard on yourself now. It's not a dry topic at all. I think it's a very worthwhile and useful topic. And it's good to have the reminder every so often, Ian, on operating procedures and everything else. The thing I would say, I suppose, you were talking there about responding on air and everything, and it's been going on from the year dot, and it really has. And part of the problem with making radios accessible and the £20 Bofang's is everyone can get one. But the thing is supposed to remember amateur radio, not to define it to a particular gender or anything else. But in the old days, it still applied. It was sort of known as a gentleman's hobby, and responding off air is always the best way than responding on air. And of course, Esther, please don't take any offence at me calling it a gentleman's hobby. But that sort of thing is, you're completely right, Ian. The best way to react to these abuse on air and everything else is not to react on air, but to talk to the local OAS rep. I'm wondering there, Ian, would you be happy enough there, the Mid-Ulster here, we're sort of updating our website and everything else to reference OAS and have a particular page for
Oh
bullet
yeah,
point
yeah,
information, and where to direct it to.
yeah, yeah,
As
absolutely.
That
Yeah,
would be great.
that would be a good idea. It would be a good idea, Dave, if you're taking an opportunity of updating your website. Certainly, I can get some hyperlinks or some shortcuts to maybe information that would be useful to you. It is, but it's yeah. I know the metaphor of the gentleman's hobby, but it doesn't really matter if you're using a £20 bullpen or a £20,000 Zephyr. You know, people do silly things all the time. That happens, and it can be just human nature that people lose it sometimes as well. I know from talking to the other advisors, there's different parts of the country, and I suppose Philip has highlighted a part of the country maybe the language would be used more colourfully than in other places, but that's part of life, and you find that when you're driving through different parts of the country and even visiting different parts of the world for radio amateur work. There's different ethos and there's different things happening there, but all we can do is to try to let people enjoy the good part of the hobby and sort out any difficulties with the right service for the other parts of the hobby as well.
Very much
It's
so.
a hard
Very much
topic.
so.
It's great to see so many people interested in it.
Just for
I'm
intro there,
sure.
folks, you can unmute yourselves there. I see Les has a hand raised there. I don't know if that's a question or not, but
Yeah.
if anyone has any questions, feel free after Les there. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was a comment. First of all, thanks very much, Ian. Absolutely great little report. This can be a bit of a sensitive issue, especially for young people coming into the hobby who maybe don't know, have no long-term experience. And it seems to me that this would be a great area of amateur radio to use cartoons and wall posters, to illustrate how we might respond and that kind of thing. So that's my top tip, really. Get a few really good cartoons made as training aids. We can put them around the club and stick them on the websites and kind of lighten somewhat what is quite actually a serious business.
Yeah, it's good you mentioned that, Les, because I think a lot of the training organizations would do that with young people, particularly young people leaving school and moving into training where they're suddenly in the world of work. Those animations, they take a topic that's very dry, very adult, very boring, and make it more relevant to the young person. So excellent idea.
Yeah, thanks.
Here in the Northwest, from the nuisance of me. You said earlier on there that the AOS is available to RSGB members and club members by default of the club being the RSGB. So if there's somebody in the hobby that hasn't got a license and isn't a member of the club, can they still use the OAS?
Is that a shortwave listener, John, you're thinking of?
Well, shortwave listener for one thing, but somebody who has a license isn't either affiliated with a club or a member of the RSGB?
If they're not affiliated to the RSGB, John, as an individual member, the service is only open for members of the RSGB or affiliated club. But Ian is quite adamant. You know, we're not going to be turning anyone away. If they want to contact Ian as the coordinator and give the story or the topic, then certainly if there's any help that can be or advice that can be given, John, you know, we're not going to, it's not a society or a secret society that's just open to the one individual, etc. We'll try and be as helpful as we can.
Or contact your district rep or regional rep in the first instance, and they'll pass it on. We support the amateur community, as I keep reminding them at leadership team meetings. There are benefits. There are benefits for members, but we support the amateur community.
Okay.
Well, I suppose.
Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose at the end of the day, I was trying to get as many people to be aware of the service that the RSGB offers, which is no bad thing because it helps the clubs too and helps the individuals. But yeah, certainly contact either Philip or Dave or myself. We'll see what we can do.
Ian first, definitely Ian first.
Ian, John's on this call too. Don't forget. Contact any of the district reps.
Is John there?
Oh, yes, he's in darkness, but you can hardly see him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very good. Oh, there's Jason. Very good.
Sorry, gentlemen, I read the email wrong. I thought it started at 8 p.m. I just jumped in at the very end.
Just can't get the staff, Ian. You can't get the staff.
I try my best. Mid-Ulster always starts a bit early, and then Antrim starts at 7:30, is it? There's different times for different ones these nights now.
Didn't even know there was a difference of time. We just went 7 o'clock because that's usually our social gathering time on a Tuesday evening. The shack's usually open from about 7. So
yeah.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Very
Anyone
good.
else? Any other questions or anything at all? Now's your chance to grill Ian on the advice. I think
station manager dancing behind Alan there. Wee bit of entertainment. That's good.
George, sorry, were you about to say something there?
Yeah, I had some involvement back with the old service back in the early to mid 90s, and when Dave calls the hobby, or the way it used to be looked at as a gentleman's hobby, it was almost like an old boys club, especially if you were reporting abuse. And knowing at the time some of the members of Ofcom in Northern Ireland, and dealing with them was one thing. Dealing with the old version of the service was, from the RSGB, was a completely different matter. It's changed a lot, and your presentation really highlights to me how much it has changed and the amount of organisation that you've got there. It's a major improvement over what I was involved in, to do with some abuse back in the, I'll say, the early to mid 90s.
Yeah, I've never worked with the AROS or never been involved with them, but I've heard comments like that, George, before. So it's probably change is no bad thing.
Yeah, well, to sort of paraphrase the letter that I received. Yes, that was back in the days when we didn't have electronic mail. The letter that I actually received from the RSGB rep was, oh no, a person with this type of call sign couldn't possibly do this. This couldn't happen. You know, so
yeah,
it's good to see it's changed and it's updated. It's a lot better organized now, and yeah.
Well, it's still quite new. You know, I think 2018 was the first advertisement, but it took until last summer, 2019, before the first get together was. So it's very much in its infancy yet. So hopefully, whenever Ian gets a bit more training organised, hopefully it'll improve then even better as well.
Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to comment on, you talked about when the clubs are doing training, and certainly Dave and myself are instructors on foundation and intermediate, and it's
Yeah,
one of the topics that we cover every time is how to
yeah,
deal with it. And we have a set amount of time. Maybe we could look at actually covering it in a bit more detail
yeah.
and emphasizing it a bit more, because it is important to make sure you don't get suckered into going
Yeah.
back and having a shouting match on air.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where it would be best to drive it forward, is to try to get some material that clubs could use, and particularly instructors or mentors in the clubs can make available to people. Because I think the more information you have, it's better for you as a trainer, and it's better for the club as well.
Yeah.
Not everybody's in a club, and I fully understand that, but I think those clubs that do the good training and the good development could use that type of information now. Okay.
Ian, I just want to back to what John said earlier about graphics and infographics and cartoons. I think it was John. No, it was Les maybe.
Yeah.
That might be a great wee idea to bring back to Ian.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there are a couple of people who volunteer for the society that are into graphics, but I do know a gentleman who's not on this call. I don't know how good he is at illustrations and whatnot and cartoons, but I do know he's quite handy with the graphics, and I might put him in touch with you.
Well, anything that would be much appreciated. What I do at the end of each presentation is I get in contact with Ian and the other volunteers and give them a bit of feedback, because I get the impression not everybody likes doing presentations, and I'm not very good at it. So some of the other volunteers
I certainly
would
wouldn't
be,
say that.
some of the other volunteers would be keen to do material production, etc. So that's a great idea, Les, and I'll pass that up the line. And certainly, if something comes out of it, fantastic, you know.
Absolutely, Ian. Thanks very much. Thanks very much. I think
No problem.
it definitely was very informative. And something else as well that I've picked up on is, when we talk about volunteering for the society, the first thing we always think about is actually just just the district representatives or the regional representatives. But another point proven this evening is there's so many areas that you can volunteer for the wider amateur radio community. So again, Ian, thank you very much for taking the time. It wasn't as bad as what you think. Um, you thought it was going to be a bit of a dry topic. I don't think so. I think it's been very informative. So again, thank you
You
so
want to
much.
see? You want? It's definitely a dry topic. I can assure you. No, thank you. It's been great having the opportunity to chat to you all, and I wish you all the best in the next presentation, whatever that is. I've forgotten what the next one is now.
The next one is MI0NPR. Nathan down there from our friends in Loughearn on Raspberry Pi projects and amateur radio. So that's next Tuesday evening. So looking forward to that.